I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. I'm Darren Hamilton. I'm City Councilman from the 5th Ward, and I'm Chairman of the Utilities Committee for the City of Fairfield. This public hearing tonight is a follow-up to a public hearing that we held earlier this year concerning siting of choices of 2 locations at the waste treatment plant for the stormwater overflow basins, equalization basins as we call them, out there, one of which is a site, as you can see in the brown up here, which is north of our existing plant, which is here. This is approximately 18.4 million gallon storage. This site is directly to the east of our plant that you see here, and it's approximately 20.3 million gallon of storage of stormwater. Stormwater gets into our, excuse me, our sanitary sewer system through what we call inflow and infiltration. We have locations in the city of Fairfield and around the outside edges of Fairfield where when we have rain events, a large amount of that water gets into our sanitary sewer system. And the projects that we have outlaid for the next 7 to 10 years are to eliminate that type of inflow into our system. Our sanitary sewer system for the city of Fairfield is considered a closed system, which means that there shouldn't be any exterior water coming into the system in different locations. Over the last 5 years, we've worked on trying to eliminate as many locations that could be done by city forces. We replaced manholes throughout, or manhole covers throughout the city where water was coming down into them. We've disconnected roof drains from individual homes here in the city where water was infiltrating into the sanitary system. We have found locations in our own stormwater system where the water gets into the street and goes down into the openings along the street, and have eliminated a large number of those. When we began this project about 7 years ago, we had a problem whenever a ½ inch of rain would fall in a 1-hour time period. We would have overflows in the millions of gallons of sanitary sewer water into our local tributaries, such as Crow Creek or Indian Creek, which is the drainage system that flows south of the new Hy-Vee location. Since that time, we have decreased the amount of overflows, and we can now handle a 1-inch rainstorm in a 1-hour time period and do less than half of the amount of water that was being outflowed into those tributaries. We've made some really good progress. Our problem now lies in that our infrastructure is so old, and the areas in which the water is coming in is so deep in the ground, it's not safe for our city forces to go out and do these major projects. We've hired 2 engineering firms to work on our systems. French Reniker, who has been a long-time engineering company that has serviced the needs of Fairfield, is taking care of the design and engineering for the transmission system, or the buried piping underneath the ground in the city and around the city. We've hired McClure Engineering, who specializes more in the sanitary sewer plant operation, to do the engineering work that we need done at the plant. Over the next 7 to 10 years, we've estimated between our 2 engineering firms that it will cost in the neighborhood of $40 million to alleviate the problem that the city of Fairfield has with its sanitary sewer. A lot of the problems that exist today come from the fact that we have been inattentive on what has been done for maintenance of our system. We have been behind in trying to keep pace with our user fees, our rates, so that we can keep pace with what has deteriorated in our system. And we have come to a point in time where we can no longer ignore what's going on with our city outflow. So at this time, I think I'd like to start with a little review of what we're looking at the sanitary sewer plant site with Mr. Mike Starkey from McClure Engineering.
Sure. Would you like me to use this, or I guess
That's fine. You can use
Sure.
that. That way you can move around a little bit.
Do you guys need it, or can you hear it?
Well, it's
You need
more
it
for...
Okay, sounds good. Sorry. Just as a recap, first I guess let me say, my name is Mike Starkey. I'm with McClure Engineering Company. We've been working here with the city for going on 2 years now, or longer. We appreciate working with you guys. The kind of just a recap, September of this previous year, we came here, initially presented at that time some of the sites we were looking at, and just kind of had a public hearing at that time. And so with that, there was a lot of concerns at that time. I'm standing here blocking everything, but we had kind of, out of our initial evaluation, we'd kind of come in, we were looking here predominantly at a west lagoon location for the equalization basin. So out of that, there was a lot of concerns. People just wanted us to make sure that we looked at the north site and that everything, our full diligence had been done. So with that, we came back and we talked more with the city, and the city made the choice that they did want to further evaluate and make sure that we were looking at all options and that we were being completely thorough in our evaluation. So we went the further step and we looked at both the west site and the north, which were our two leading options, and did a more thorough, detailed evaluation. And with that, meant that we went out and did soil borings for both sites, did about 30 to 35 soil borings out there to cover both sites, and thoroughly looked at everything. Out of that, we got the results and took that information and made sure that we could do a more thorough cost evaluation of both sites and the viability for building on both sites. So with that being said, we have reviewed the soil analysis, and what's presented here is the two sites. In that time, we went a step further and we made sure that we looked at everything further to lay out the best and optimize the capacity that we could get with each site, and the location of balancing the soils and what could actually physically work out there. So with that, the west site gave, as Darren alluded to, we were able to get 20.3 million gallons of additional storage at a total, just construction costs, these are all construction costs, of $2.9 million. So on the north site, we really can't get as much volume that's there because there is a gully or a swale that comes through there, and just the way how everything would lay, trying to maximize the capacity per cost, and we were able to get about 18.4 million gallons there with a cost of $4 million. To get into a little bit of explanation as to why there is additional costs on the north site versus this west. First, it's just the pure volume of soil that we have to move, because we basically are shaving off the top of a hill and having to build that up. So we are moving a lot more earth. But the soils evaluation itself found some things out there that were not as conducive to building the basin as the west. So what we found out there was that there was a higher groundwater table coming from what's called perched groundwater, which would just be, it's a fancy way of saying it's just groundwater that's trapped between impermeable soil. So it would be right at the level that we're wanting to build the lagoon. So that would be additional construction costs on dealing with that and getting rid of it. So not only during construction, but long-term dealing with that. So that was one issue. The second issue was that there were a lot of sand seams that were found out there. So that is common when you find perched groundwater, but That is just soil that doesn't work well with lagoons. So again, that's additional soil that we just could not use and we'd have to remove. So those two things, plus the fact that this is not really a cost and use a matter, but it should also be considered that we're trying to really maximize this area and trying to be get the volume that we want. And this would be built over top of this conveyance sewer that's being come down there, which is already deep, but we would be making it a good 20 feet deeper. So all that causes us issues if you ever had to go up there and work on it. When you would do that, you're not really it's nothing like you're just working out in the open field. All the costs and stuff associated with making sure that you're protecting that lagoon when you do that and repair it, that would be something to consider, not in today's cost, but something to consider for the future. So, with all that being said, these are just construction costs. Land acquisition costs would still come into play and are yet to be determined, and that's all process yet to take place. But right now, I question whether that would be enough to bring these two back, but we would see where that is. But where we are today is about $1 million more expensive to build the north site than we would be for the west.
What was that last part? I'm sorry.
We're about $1 million
Yeah, and then you said something I couldn't hear after that.
today, or $1 million more to build the north site than the west site. So with that, I guess there's the whole other component to this is the conveyance, and with that, we'll have Melanie come up.
Steve, would you put that other one up there for me? The far one's fine.
Place it so that north is straight up, if you would, so it's less confusing when you look at it and point to the diagram.
Gotcha.
There, thank you.
So my name is Melanie Carlson. I'm with French Reniker Associates. With me tonight, I have John Meyer and Steve Hausner, also with our company. I do have a much larger map that we can spread out on this table. Our thought process was we could, in a moment, we could answer general questions related to the project, but then we could break up into more of the open house forum that we had a while ago. And then specifically, the property owners related to the conveyance can look and see how it impacts you more specifically. So, but generally speaking, this is what we have for a proposed layout of the conveyance system. And the conveyance system, as Darren mentioned, is what takes the sewer. It's the pipes that take the sewer from town down to the wastewater treatment plant. This is what we're calling step 1. We're looking at a step 2 that would then take us north from Lamson Woods, which is our cutoff point, Lamson Woods, Mint Boulevard. But step 2 would take us from there on north onto campus. We are looking, or I should say the city will be looking at purchasing temporary, or otherwise known as construction easements for this project, as well as permanent easements. And when you have a chance to look at this a little closer, you can see that we're not using the exact same route as the existing conveyance. One of the reasons is we will be deeper than the existing sewer, and so you can't keep the existing sewer in service while you're building the new one. So we are looking for an additional route. One thing I will mention is when this was built in the 60s, the 80s and the 60s, they built it in the best possible place. They built it in the lowest part. So because the best place is already taken, we had to go for the next best thing. The permanent easements are granted over to the city for perpetuity, and as long as the city wants to keep it, and it keeps the sewer there. The temporary easements are for during construction. There is a set time period that the city would own that easement, and then it would get turned back over to the landowner. The permanent easements would not allow you to construct anything on the easement, but you can still farm, mow, garden, whatever you might want to do over it. the easements would also not allow you to significantly change the elevation, either adding or subtracting, so that we can keep the pipe in good condition as it's designed. The permanent easements also allow the city access points to do maintenance on that property, or on that easement. So with that, I think we want to open it up for questions.
Yeah. I would like to open it up right now for general questions, more specific questions affecting the various property owners here, whether they were sent a letter to describe that the city is looking for a purchase of an easement, or if the city is looking for the siting of the stormwater basins. I think we're going to split off into two groups after we've had this general session that's going on right here now. So do we have anybody that has a question broadly over the entire plan that we may have for both these locations? Yes.
When we received the
Here.
original...
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. When we received the original letters, some of us got waivers, which none of us, or many of us, didn't understand what that meant to us, but we had it described as not being able to build anything on our property within 1,000 feet of some structure that might be put in. But does this also apply or mean that our property may be that line of new construction?
I can speak to your property specifically. I know that the sewer route does not go through your property. The people that we talked about waivers, if the city would expand the wastewater treatment plant onto this corner, the waiver allows the city to do that. It doesn't say that you can't build within that 1,000 feet. It just means that if you build, the city can still build within this area. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, you had a question?
My name is Lila Williams, and I have a question about the costs. The gentleman from McClure said that the cost of one was 2.9, and the cost of the second was 4.1, I'm sorry, 4.0. But we kind of glossed over the additional cost, and I think it got lost, and maybe a lot of people didn't pick up, that there is going to be a large cost of property acquisition in the lower cost engineered. How many properties? I think there's maybe 7 properties under consideration. I know they want to take my entire home and property, and the Myers as well. I think that there's 4, 5, 6, 7 other properties. How many, Kevin?
You can see the acreage, I think, on here.
Yeah, there's really only
28,
2.
2811 here.
I can speak to that, but
Yeah, go ahead.
there's, on the west option that Lila, your property and so forth is, there's really 2 properties that we're looking to purchase the land. And then there'd be 7 properties that we'd be looking to try to get waivers from and working with the landowners there. So that would be 9 property owners. And what I did say earlier is that we're just talking construction cost. It's a 1.1 million. But when you look at not just, I guess, looking at the 2, with yours, the land that we're needing to acquire is really only 28 acres versus this. Buying this property, we're looking, could be greater, property 41 or yet to be determined number. But this whole property here is the 41 acres. So.
You see, Kevin, when I talked with you earlier today, you said I had asked for a report so I could intelligently address it when I got to the meeting. You said there wasn't a report and you couldn't show me the facts and figures that they had because inside those facts and figures were approximations of the cost of acquisition of property. And although you might not be able to tell us because of privacy issues what you approximated the cost to be, can you please give us an idea at this meeting what the approximate costs of property buying out would be with one as opposed to the other?
I'm not sure about the question. I didn't really involve a whole lot of detail today in discussing that I remember with you at all about cost or size of property or anything like that. Yeah, we never had a written report tonight, though, as I told you today. This is the report. It's going to be just going over the different items, but we can get copies of each of the items in total for anyone here who would like to take them with them. And, could come in later even for more talk individually with myself or Darren, or we could, get conference calls with the folks who are here today. Ed, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'd like to see somebody speak generally, though, about the property costs, because there is some general understanding about what it would be between the two, so
Yeah.
I think something should be said about that.
This is a very important factor in deciding
Yes,
which
ma'am.
type we're going to go with. And I think it's a little bit deceptive to say it's 1.9 versus 4.0, because you really don't have the bottom line cost until you factor in those property acquisitions.
Yeah,
While you may not have appraisals of them all, certainly you can give us an idea.
Yeah, and we're looking up right now just some appraised values.
You
But
want me to start reading
what I don't want to say is I don't know where those top numbers are. So but we can tell you what the appraised values, the assessed values. Well, no, so,
You can use the public record, Mike, and talk about tax value.
yeah, just give me what the assessed value is.
Yeah, so the assessed value, okay, so based on our best records, the assessed value, Lila, of your property in particular, which is right here, is approximately $127,300 according to the Jefferson County Assessor's website. The Myers property down here, F and G on this map, the assessed value of that property is $112,500. If we're looking up here on this option, property C, which is the Conger Farm, I'm not quite sure what the assessed value is, but it's a 37-acre property. Depending on what the land costs are, if you just say $10,000 an acre to keep the math easy, that's about $370,000 for this property. And then Lila, your property here, which does not have a home, is about 5 acres. Again, using $10,000 would be about $50,000 of cost.
If there's 9 other properties you're going to have to acquire, or 7?
No,
we're not acquiring.
No, they
You're
wouldn't be
acquiring the
acquired.
front yards, aren't you?
No, we're not acquiring
1,000
yards. It's a-
Yeah, I guess John has made a good point.
Please
This-
explain the waivers
What,
again.
what we're
and
wanting to
they
do,
mean.
we're trying to be good neighbors with everybody here, and that's part of the waiver process, is that we're just wanting to let you, we know that we're putting in a EQ basin, so we're just wanting to try to, none of these have to be purchased that are shown in the red, and none of them actually have to have waivers at this point. All we were trying to do is, once this is in, was to make sure that we could retain the flexibility in the future, that if you were to, say, sell this property, or somebody wanted to move in, you want to build a house right here, you're understanding that you're building next to a EQ basin, that's there, and you understand what's built there, so that if we need to expand and come a little bit further, which is something very, very far out in the future, but we're trying to look towards the long-term interests of the city, that if the city needs to expand that at all, they have that flexibility, and that's what we're trying to obtain with that waiver. But to build this today, John is correct. None of these would have to be obtained or purchased.
So may I clarify, the only 2 properties that you're going to purchase, if you go with the one that is west, would be Terry Meyer's property and my property?
Yes,
Do I understand that?
and on this one would be your property here and the Conger property here.
You're not going to be purchasing any properties south of me?
On the,
No.
yeah, Myers.
Myers.
For this option, no, these are not being purchased. These are just trying to purchase the future waiver rights to expand. We need to. And so that,
You are purchasing the property?
nope,
No, we're not.
it's a waiver. It's basically just a contractual thing. It says, I understand what's being put there, and I understand that in the future, if I choose to build something up right here, that I understand that now the city still has the right to expand that EQ basin closer to me, not onto my property and and nothing, but
One important thing to remember is that waivers are for us, the government, not for the homeowner. They're to allow us to exist and use space in a certain way within 1,000 feet of the home.
What would the cost be of the waivers on these 9 properties?
And just to reiterate, the difference in the cost that we're looking at today is construction only. We wanted to provide a baseline number for folks so they could say, okay, baseline construction only costs are blank. That's how they compare in construction only. Part of the reason for the different construction costs is the amount of fill here and the way that it would have to be constructed compared to, otherwise on this other spot, on the west spot. But those other costs, in addition, would just add to a differentiation with the cost and probably make it higher. I mean, there's 41 acres. There's going to be more acres in one situation than the other, but we didn't want to even get into all that. We just wanted to say construction, because the question was to construction originally. What if we built it here versus building it there? So, I mean,
When the city council makes their decision, I would hope that they're going to take into account the total cost, not just the construction, but the acquisition of property as well. And I think truthfully, we should add that in, including the waivers, and see which is higher, or how close they come.
yeah, that will ultimately be reviewed and considered.
ultimately we would, but initially, just to answer the question of does it make better sense to construct in one area other than this, one area versus the other, construction costs are going to tell you baseline what you need to know there. The rest of it, of course, we will definitely take strong consideration in as an ultimate cost to the public. But, for deciding where that you want to put the facility, the construction costs, the construction impacts, the different peripheral impacts from the construction, as in this case, where you're constructing and you can see the conveyance line, the actual slope to this basin would be over that conveyance line, making it several feet deeper than it actually would be to grade and construction grade. Meaning if you wanted to fix that at any time in the future, you would have to basically destroy the solvency or the viability of this basin and rebuild it to maintain that pipe under there. Those costs are not worked into the construction cost either, but certainly we would, if we were going to analyze further, into this thing as overall cost, we would definitely take that in consideration. The future cost of doing that work to replace that basin would be astronomical.
Kevin, didn't the engineer from French Reniker, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name already. Melanie, just say that those lines are going to have to be several feet deeper anyway? Did I mishear that?
Overall, all of our lines are going to, excuse me, all of our lines are going to be deeper overall.
Including the ones we were just talking about?
Yes, all of them, all the way down and up through the eastern and western side of the conveyance, because the choice, in other words, the lowest elevation position is already taken up originally back in the 60s, or 20s, I should say. So obviously our spot's going to have to be a little lower because we have to get it down to grade point, still make it flow. But
Whether or not you put the basin north, it's still going to have to go lower.
Yeah, I guess to speak to that, the problem's not that it's lower. I mean, we understand that it's lower. It's the problem of not just getting to it, but it's the peripheral problems of what we cause into the lagoon as we'd have to lay back to get that deep to that. So we would, we're deeper out here, and we understand that, and we still would just have to dig, an extra 5 feet to get to the sewer out here. But it's the problem that we've got all this dirt, and as we remove that, we're tearing the bankment away of this EQ basin. And therefore, when you do that, you lose strength. It's going to fail. You got to go back through all that work to have to repair it and put it back to its original condition.
Mike, this is probably more a question for Melanie. When we talk about a lower elevation of the pipe, aren't we actually talking about the earth cover that's going to be above the pipe and how you dig down to the location to install it? Because you really can't have much of a change on the elevation as it comes into the plant itself greater than what we currently have. Now, is that thinking logically, or is it the fact that we're going to go from where we're only 8 foot of cover over here and we're going to drop the pipe 6 foot and then have to dig where it's going to end up being 20 foot over top of the pipe instead of 6 foot over the pipe?
Because of the design of the headworks and that using the screw pumps at the headworks allows us to go deeper with the pipe. And I'm just going to use random numbers that if right now it's coming into the plant at 700, we're going to be bringing the bottom of that pipe in at 695.
Okay, so that would be about a 5 foot drop.
Yes.
You're talking about just 5 foot lower.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, just to simplify it, we have the flexibility because we are pumping first thing as we come into the plant, that they could come in deeper, which we've kind of have been working together on, come in deeper, and that gives you there's a future advantages to that too, that you guys have. Maybe you could open up other parts of town, because you have a deeper sewer now that maybe you could tie other places in hydraulically. So your hands have not been tied so much,
Right.
And there was benefits to that. I'll let Melanie speak.
And currently, the size of the pipe that comes into the plant, the diameter of that pipe is one size. This pipe that will be coming into the plant is considerably larger.
Yep.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
There are 2 pipes coming into the plant. One of them is 18-inch. Thank you, Sean. 18-inch and 21-inch are the 2 sizes coming in. As you know, a lot of the sewer doesn't make it down to the plant. It comes out of the manholes before it gets there. So the proposed size of the pipe from where Grease Lightning comes in, Grease Lightning, so the west side of town comes in right here at the trail. It gets pumped through the hospital grounds and comes down to this point. So from here to the treatment plant, we're proposing 60-inch diameter. That's about 2 inches shorter than me. And from there on up to Lamson Woods, we're proposing 48-inch diameter. Another general question?
Okay, at this time, I think, oh, you have one. Yes, sir.
The lagoons that you're proposing.
Could you, we need to, sorry.
No, I must have missed it. The lagoons you're proposing to build, this is for stormwater or sewage water? Or both, or?
It's wastewater. By definition, it is wastewater. By definition, it is wastewater. We call them storm water EQ because the only time we pump up to them is when you've had a storm event and you've exceeded the capacity of the plant. So we can't handle it all. We're getting it all down. We're doing our best to get it all down to the plant, and we pump up to these EQ basins, store it there until the storm event passes, and then we would return that flow back to the plant and treat it. It's not going to have the strength and the fecal, the problems that as strong as pure raw wastewater, because it's going to be diluted with a lot of the I&I infiltration, rainwater and stuff that happens.
What's I&I?
One I stands for infiltration and one I stands for inflow. Yes.
Question. This came up before, and when I originally received the waiver, I went over to French Reniker and asked them about the quality of the water in those ponds they wanted to put at that point very close to where I live. And then I found out, and it was a good explanation that he gave, that they were going to dilute it so much that it wasn't really, a problem for odors and things like that, because they had a 3-foot berm around there to collect all the rainwater. And I said, has anybody noticed that we've been in a 2-year drought? And that makes a huge difference. And they said, oh, no, it would take years to actually, delete all that rainwater that might be in there. Well, at our property, and I share one of these ponds, there is an 1.5 acre pond, and then there's a 5.5 acre pond, which over the drought period, those bigger ponds even went down about 4 feet. So a 3-foot berm, I'm a little concerned about if anybody, is close to that. It looks like maybe that one that was close to me is not going to be there. I hope. But that's a consideration in terms of just depending upon rainwater if we have more drought. So that was my question that stands.
Address the 2 ponds that are currently out there on site and how they really have never been dry in the time that the city's had them. They've been down very low. They've been filled with sludge at times, which is processed material from the plant that we didn't have capacity to store, but we do now with the new sludge storage tank that I think some have seen from the roadway, the blue tank that's out there at the plant. And Scott, could you maybe...
Could one of you guys speak to, has it been dry, or,
so
I don't know.
let's have Sean address.
I don't know if I know that answer, but,
Talked about what you talked about.
thank you.
Yeah, at the 2 lagoons we have right now, we try to hold about a 3 to 3.5 foot freeboard on it. That's what we call freeboard is level in the pond itself. The reason why you keep a freeboard like that is to actually, it does hold any smells down. It basically seals it off. Yeah, we've never had them gone dry. We've had problems with our ponds up there, like Darren had mentioned, with sediments put up there. It was actually organics. Both ponds have now been completely cleaned out. So that's helped us even more with that problem. But with water depletion up there, if we were to get just a little bit low, say we got down to 1.5 foot, just something happened, even at half-inch rain, quarter-inch rain, we could always divert water there. So, I mean, we could always hold that freeboard at whatever level we decided, and we would want to do it during a rain event, so it is diluted, but we could divert it up there.
Yeah. Yeah, we will try to, well, we're designing full flexibility here for Sean at the lagoon as far as pumping up to it a period of times and/or for how he returns the flow.
Thanks.
Yes.
I would like to point out that even with the best engineering and the best intentions, even currently, this plant does have problems, and from time to time you can smell it. If they enlarge it, it's going to be even more readily smellable from time to time. No matter how well we plan, I think you're going to find that, yes, you are going to have time when the water goes down. For whatever reason, you cannot control the smell. And you know, Bill Gates' computer probably crashes from time to time. I fail to believe he's the one person in the world who has a computer that doesn't crash. They say that it isn't when your computer will, if your computer will crash, it's when. And if you look up even the newer wastewater treatment plants, things of this nature online, you will find they are notorious for breaking down. It's not a matter of if they will break down, I think it's a matter of when. This will happen. It's not a perfect world. And we need to take that into consideration for quality of life of this area of Fairfield as well. It is going to break down. You will smell it from time to time. It's going to happen. You can't tell us that because you have this plan for the water that no one will smell it. I don't believe it's going to happen that way.
Well, a previous person that used to work there at the wastewater plant gave me a phone number to call 24/7, and they said, if it's a strong odor in the area, just let us know 24/7, and we'll just put more oxygen in something or other, and it'll take that down. So there may be some maneuvers that they can do to improve it. It doesn't happen often, but the hard thing is when you've invited company over. And then you say, well, maybe tonight's not a good night to come, you know, kind of thing. But there are little techniques that may be
There are, but it's still going to break down, and I have called, and no, it hasn't been cleared up. These things just happen, it's a part of life. And if they choose that west area, it's going to be that much closer to the residents of Marigold Boulevard. It is a quality of life issue that we should think about.
That'll happen. But I guess to speak to that, what you're referring to is the plant is a mechanical plant. Things will break down from time to time. All pieces of machines do. I think if I could speak to, I think Sean and Scott both need to be kind of commended. I think they've done a really good job. If you haven't had a chance to go down and see that plant, the plant is very old. And so a lot of the problems that they're dealing with is from the fact that a lot of the improvements that we're proposing to make today is going to help the performance of that plant long term. So I think and a lot of the odor issues that you saw came from the fact predominantly was because a lot of sludge was getting stored because they had no place to put the sludge. We've since taken the first step. Brent Drinker has worked with the plant, and there's been a storage tank that's been built, and that's taken the first step in helping with that. So now if things get operated the way that they're intended, you can never say never, but I'm saying that things will go a long way to be improved from where they are today. So the, I think the lagoon itself there's very minimal up there that is mechanical. It's just a storage. It's not a continuous storage long-term, other than we will leave, like you alluded to, the intent is to leave 3 foot of water that will stay in there that helps to form that. Because what happens is while it's there, some solids will settle out. So, but all that being said, it's to get it up there, hold it, and then return it as soon as we can after the storm has passed so that we can, that's how it's meant to work. So there's not a lot of moving parts up there to break down.
Thank you.
So.
This gentleman here has a question.
Are the old lines going to be abandoned once the new one is installed?
If you have more, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I should ask you.
I just wanted to
Go ahead and ask.
Are the old lines going to be abandoned once the new line is in place?
The sewers will be abandoned. The easements will not. The city and the golf course have lines that are not being planned on being relocated on the existing easements, so those would stay in place. And as far as abandon, for example, the manhole tops will be taken off, perhaps 5 feet below grade, taken off so that farming activities could go right over the top of where the manholes were located. The pipes themselves will not be removed. Okay.
Talk about how those areas are going to be secured after we remove those tops. Those areas will be safe and secure.
Yes, yeah, we remove the top so we don't leave a hole. The manhole gets filled with either concrete or rock so that a void's not going to be. Yes, Mayor.
Not to leave
the issue of odor. When you just mentioned, Mike, that the new pond would settle out, is there a process of removing those solids that are settling out, and what is that?
Yes. Thank you. Much rather you run than me. So I'm sweating enough as is, probably sitting up here. But the solids. There will be some solids that settle down. And I don't want to get too technical, but stuff that comes in will just be transferred up there, and some solids will settle out. But we're not expecting a lot. That is the purpose of the water cap that we're maintaining over that. But it'll be something that they just monitor. They go out and watch it. And the lagoons, I say lagoons, I'm sorry, but the EQ basins themselves are going to be built with a concrete pad here, with a push wall around it that they can bring a skid loader in and actually clean the solids out from time to time as they need it to try to stay ahead of that issue. So.
What is a skid loader? And if you clean them out in the water, if the water gets taken away,
I use.
will you be able to smell what's on the bottom? You said you're going to transfer the water out.
It would be a fairly short time.
Yeah, it would be like a 5-day thing that might happen, and it, like John said, it's the size of this lagoon and what we're seeing. I'm thinking that's a 5-10 year event occurrence. It's something that's not going to happen every 6 months or something like that. So it's just something that we're just trying to provide the best facility, so when it has to be done, you're set up to do it. And when I say a skid loader, I don't know the exact term of it, but I've heard them called bobcats, or it's what the guys sit in and get to play, and they have a little bit of bucket at the front. So that's what I mean by skid loader. Okay, so. Okay.
Okay. All right, I think I'm going to have Melanie lay out some of the larger maps for the conveyance system, which is the piping that's coming down from Lamson Woods to the headworks at the plant right in here. And then I don't know where we can set up with the other. We have our auditors coming, and we're kind of set up in the conference room with their materials.
Move it back in the general area back in the back if you like.
Oh, yeah, okay, we can move the portion of our meeting concerning the equalization ponds back to by where Kevin's office is in the back portion of City Hall back here, and anybody that would like to address some specific questions about that are welcome to come back and join them back there. That'll be Mike Starkey and his associate here. And then again, we'll have Melanie and French Reniker's associates come up and lay out on this table the larger map that they spoke to. So,
Mayor?
Yes, Mayor.
I missed just the first couple minutes of the meeting, and I know you had spoken to the group. Did you talk about the timeline for the decision and the process for selecting which site?
No, I haven't yet.
Do that so that everybody understands what goes on beyond this meeting.
All right. The timeline that has been talked about is that the proposals here will be fine-tuned a little bit farther, and it will be presented to the utility committee at a public meeting. And then once the utility committee understands which site proposal is the one that the committee wants to present to the council, they will do that at a full council session after that meeting. Right now, I have a utility committee meeting set for this coming Monday evening, where we're going to talk about some of the things that we're talking about here at the meeting with the full utility committee. And we'll make some determinations at that time, probably with the conveyance system. With the equalization ponds, we'll come back to another meeting, which we'll set up so that we can have a longer time that the committee can go over all of the information that's presented from McClure Engineering at that time. And then a determination will be made, and it will be taken to a full council meeting and presented to the full council. So it's going to take probably two votes, a vote of the utility committee to propose the conveyance system to the council. Then the council members will all have a chance to ask questions, and we'll have our engineers present at that meeting. And then the full council will take a vote to decide which direction they want to go. And it will be the same with the equalization ponds. So there's going to be at least 4 more meetings that these 2 different items are going to be addressed at coming up, and we're hoping to get a determination from the entire council as which direction the city would like to go with, so that we can bring all of these plans to letting by the fall, in the fall. So that way we have time for the engineering firms to be able to complete a lot of their work. It may be winter time before the documents are actually prepared and the lettings can be made, but no construction would stop or start until at the earliest next summer. So,
What are lettings, please?
Lettings are where plans and specifications have been drawn up by the engineers, and then those are presented to general contractors through advertisement in trade publications, newspapers, through approved bidders lists. They're notified that way. They're allowed to come in and pick up a set of the plans and specifications for each project. Then they're given a time frame that they need to develop their estimate of what it would take to build these projects. Those estimates will be opened at a public hearing, a city council meeting, and each one of the estimates will be looked at by the engineers, and the most feasible estimate, usually the lowest estimate, will be presented to the council as working for the city through our engineers. And at that time, the council will vote on which estimate that they want to go with for the project. And once that's done, there will be a contract time period set up so that the contractor knows when they absolutely have to start with the project and when the general completion date of the project should be, based on the amount of working days that it would take to complete the project. So, anything else?
When are you hoping to break ground, and where would you break ground?
Right now, I think we're trying to project breaking ground sometime spring or summer of, of the following year. 2015 or 2016.
Actually, fall 2014 is what.
Fall
what
of
had been presented
2014.
originally to DNR.
Okay.
So that's the schedule we're moving on right now.
Okay. So,
Fall of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
And where would you break ground? Where are you going to start?
I'm assuming the longest stretch of time of work will be at the plant. I'm guessing that's where the work will start.
right, because it will take approximately a couple of years,
18 months is what we need.
2 years, depending on weather.
Yes.
When would you break ground on the property you acquired? I guess that's my question. When do the people whose homes you hope to take away have to be gone?
That's all dependent upon the acquisition process and so forth. So that could be the spring of 2015 or whenever. I don't know that would have to happen by fall of 2014.
How can you break ground if the people are still in their homes?
Sorry. Here, I'll have.
The treatment plant will have one contract, one contractor, one letting process. The conveyance system will have another contract letting process, and the equalization basins will have a third contractor and contract. So that will allow, once the easements are purchased for the conveyance, that project can break ground. Because the improvements of the headworks and at the treatment plant do not require any either easements or land purchases, it can begin this May. Now the equalization basins, that would break ground once those properties are acquired, and the time period for that is set based off of the laws of the state that allow so many days for review appraisals, and I'm not going to get into that time period, but that is set by how the process goes. So there will be 3 contractors, which allow 3 different starting dates.
All right. Why don't we break into the 2 groups then at this time, and we'll go over some of this information in a little bit more detail with you all.
No more formal presentations.
No, there really is no more formal presentation of information that we have at this time this evening. I would like to thank everybody that has come out for coming, and again, we're going to have utility committee meetings. We'll have council meetings to discuss these items further. Thank you.